When I first fell in love, so to me that's when I came out, when I fell in love. And I fell in love when I was 15, and I fell in love with a high school friend who didn't stay a friend for very long. And we did that typical flirtation of young teens and getting to know each other, exploring the idea that we could be in love, period. And I have to honestly say it wasn't so much about sexuality as it was about the individual. I fell in love with a person, and 50 plus years later, I'm still in love with that same woman.
Wow, my coming out process was really very simple for me. I fell in love, and it blew my mind. I just remember being so proud to be in love like that. I was not in any way ashamed or hesitant to go out in public and walk down the street arm in arm. It just felt good to be in love.
At the age of 10? I came out at the age of 10. I don't know when I came out. I came out at probably the first thought of a woman giving me the, between my legs. Probably at the age of 10.
I married my best friend. We joke that it's sort of one great big sleepover every night.
It's funny because no one actually has ever asked me this before, seriously. Certainly, so I've not really talked about it much before. I probably have known that I knew that I was different in middle school. I was able to put a name on it and experience it in high school. And then I really got to fully understand what it meant to be a gay man, especially a gay man of color, when I got to college in Atlanta at Morehouse College.
And Tom was studying finance and I was studying theater. So no, our worlds were not going to overlap. I came out in 1986 at college. I had a great experience. I had a really terrific group of friends, new friends, who I met through a class, on campus about human sexuality and about gay and lesbian experience, and they brought me out, and it was really great. It obviously had been something that I had been controlling for a long time, but it was very positive.
We were so unsure of what this was. We knew it wasn't like anybody else's, and I have to say, when I left home to go to college, I was still convinced we were the only two women in love in the whole world.
There's just no way to deny when you fall in love, and I truly believe and understand what it is when people say love is love, because it changed everything in my world, and it made me more willing to live into my truth, because I was finally at 50, almost 50 years old, ready to live into my truth, and so it changed everything.
I knew that the one person that may have an issue with this personally would be my father, who loved me very, very, very dearly, and was very open with his emotions. But was a son of a black pastor, and someone who was a Republican and who had just social conservative tendencies, and we lived on a farm, and so I knew it would be a challenging conversation, not one that we would have trouble overcoming, but I knew it would be challenging.
Mine was rough. My coming out process was rough. I went to an all-boys Catholic school, and that was not an affirming environment, but it wasn't for most kids back then in the 80s. I went to college at Miami University. I was in the closet, even for myself. I came out of Miami. I went to work for the family business, which is Donato's Pizza, and I started to come to terms, and it was a rough process. I was in bad shape. I had to make some pretty important choices to decide to stay in this. And I had some powerful moments. I met somebody and fell in love. That was transformative. And then the first person besides him that I came out to was my dad, and I was lucky. My dad, who was also my boss, supported me 100% from the very beginning, and it made all the difference for me.
I think I waited for a long time to have that conversation. And actually, I never did. My dad died my freshman year of college. And so I never had to have the hardest conversation, truthfully. The secondary conversations with the rest of my family, I always knew would be easy. My uncle is openly gay. He's passed now. My mom's brother, my great uncle, who died at 94 2 years ago, was openly gay most of his life.
My mother would show me videos of when I was, I think, 2 or 3 years old at Christmas time, and they would set out all of the gifts and sort of decorate the living room, and we would come down and the gifts were kind of, many of them were set out, and so they were my sister's toys, and they were all pink and purple and glittery, and then boy toys that were like construction trucks or racetracks. And in this video, you see me walking down the steps and look at the two and make a beeline for my sister's toys. I mean, literally 3 years old. And you hear the like disappointment in my mom and dad's voice almost, you know, they're like, oh boy, oh boy, what are we in for? So from my very earliest memories, I knew I was a girl.
Many of us who were closeted and coming to terms with being gay or bisexual or transgender, we live in fear every day. And living in fear it sucks, you know, it's draining. It's not good for our mental health. And, you know, just to live like that, it's almost like a post-traumatic stress syndrome. It's like, really? And then to start to come to terms, and it's taken me years and years and years to get more and more comfortable in my own skin. And the more authentic I have been in more places, in every place, really the healthier and more integrated I've become.
So from a very early age, I felt alienated and like I was a secret, and I had to keep this secret. I like to say that if I was in a closet, it was a glass closet, like everyone could clearly see I was in there. But it's like you just don't acknowledge it. And if you do acknowledge it, you mock it. And I was just mocked all through my childhood. I was the butt of every joke through elementary school. I was bullied all through middle school. I was bullied through high school. I was never included in social activities.
I was really, really harassed heavily by my father. And he would call me, you know, just these derogatory words, and then also tell me that I wouldn't really build up to anything, so I wouldn't be successful. I wouldn't have, I wasn't normal. And so that harassment really was catastrophic for me.
I was called faggot, I was called queer, I was called sissy. I was also being bullied for being Latino. I was called wetback. I was told to go back to my country.
So, I mean, I would get picked on almost every single day at school, whether it was the color of my skin, the shape of my eyes, or someone that thinks I might be gay. And granted, as a 6th grader, 7th grader, even a high school student, I didn't really know what gay was. The only gay that was talked about was in the Bible at Sunday school.
Our society really wants us to sort of like pick one side or the other and fit into one. So being in that middle ground space, I think, almost freaks people out a little bit more than being trans sometimes, you know. I often, you know, have these incidents, particularly at airports, right, where you're trying to get through security and TSA is always like, oh no, you've set something off, and it's because somebody at TSA has pressed the wrong button for the machine. And then, you know, you're running off to an airport restroom before you get on a plane, and everybody's like, oh my God, you're going into the wrong restroom. And days like that, I definitely think, man, it'd be a lot easier to just kind of fit one box or the other.
So I became aware of my disconnect of my body when I was in kindergarten, and I had a realization in freshman year of high school that something was really off, and I started really having deep-seated hate feelings towards myself when I was in freshman year of high school.
And to give you kind of an example of how extreme it was, I had, I got a watch like from the thrift store that had all these different gears on it and lots of buttons, and it was this big old chunky thing. And it kind of reminded me of the Power Rangers morphers, or like their communicators. And so every single day of my middle school years, early middle school years, I wore this watch and told myself that I was really the pink Power Ranger. And when I hit this button, it created like a skin, like a disguise over me, like it projected this boy image. And that's what everyone saw, because I was, you know, really here to save the world or fight monsters or something. And I lived in this fantasy world where to detach from my body and to cope with this crippling gender dysphoria, I had to pretend that this watch projected this image of me. And I knew the secret, but, you know, no one else did, and how that somehow protected me.
In 1988, in October 31st, 1988, my brother committed suicide. And not until many months, really weeks later, did I realize that my brother committed suicide because he grappled with his own sexuality. I remember coming out to him, hoping he would come out to me, frankly.
When I started feeling like these discovery feelings and the self-hate was happening, I was crying every day and coming home just really depressed and really sad, and my dad could see that, and he stopped me again and asked me if I wanted to be a man, and he was just like, I'm going to ask you one more time, and I just wanted to see if these feelings are actually true, and it's, do you actually want to be a man? And yeah, yep, I broke down. But yeah, so my father hugged me and was like, it's gonna be okay. Give myself a second. Anyways, okay, so, oh fuck, okay. Yeah, he said it. Gonna be okay. We'll wait on telling your mom. But I was a mess, and yeah, and then so he told my mother, and then that's when it just went to a different light where things are better now. just let you know. But she wasn't very happy. She was more afraid of me once again not being able to have a baby and fulfill those dreams of hers, and also being laughed out of the town that I grew up in, and laughed out of the church, and not finding love, and I was going to get murdered, and I was just going to end up on the street, and I was going to become just everything bad. Yeah.
And today, what's that relationship like?
Today, it's wonderful. My mother is my biggest cheerleader. Both my parents came full circle, and my mom is the cutest woman ever. She will tell me, I ran into so-and-so at the grocery store today, and they asked me how my daughter was doing, and I just smiled and pulled out my phone and showed them photos of you. Fuck. Did not expect that. Anyway, she was just so proud. She would just pull out her phone and be like, wow, like, this is my son. Look how beautiful he is. He's so happy and he's so talented and he's making a name for himself. And he's an artist and he's an activist and so both my parents are fully with me and they're amazing and they support me so much.
This is the best time in the history of being part of the LGBTQ community. We're 50 years past the Stonewall riots in New York, and all of us are living new ways of expression, new ways of freedom in our lives.
We have come very far, and anyone who disparages where we are right now just doesn't understand history, and certainly aren't connected to the folks who are a little older than us who had to deal with things that we didn't. Now, the truth though is that in many places, even in this state, statewide, folks are not protected from discrimination, from employment, from housing. We have done some things in the city, but having statewide protections is extremely important.
Well, I just got to testify today for Senate Bill 11, which is the Ohio Fairness Act. We have been trying to get that bill passed for decades in Ohio. And I got to hear testimony and I got to testify, and I'm like, really? We still can get fired for being gay? Which means there are thousands and thousands of people who are lying at work because they're in an unsafe environment. And even if it's not like outwardly, hey, we don't like gay people, you don't know that, right? And your paycheck depends on it, and feeding your family depends on it. That is still legal in Ohio, and it's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace.
I have worked in corporate America, right? And when you get that sort of like, your work's all right, but we don't know if we want to promote you or give you the raise or whatever it is that's going on in corporate America, right? And you're like, is it because I'm black? Is it because I'm openly gay? Is it because the gender nonconforming thing? Like, what is it, right? You always hear those stories where it's not sort of that overt discrimination, but it's just that, we just don't know if we really want to be bothered with you.
In some of the places that I got to visit and really got to know through my congressional campaign, and you can picture in your mind, right, a school teacher in Chillicothe, or someone who's getting ready to graduate and is looking for a job, even here in Hilliard or in Grove City, just wanting to leave Ohio, wanting to be as careful as possible. That school teacher really crosses his finger and hopes that no one knows that he goes home to his boyfriend every night, and that student, who's looking for work just wants to get out of here so that she doesn't have to worry about, just doesn't have to deal with it, right? The hassle, the worry about, what if I get a supervisor who doesn't like gay people? Or
we have work to do. We have a lot of work to do, but we should use the success and the accomplishments of recent, and especially in this day of an age of Trump, we should be reminded of how recent and what it felt like to win, and use that as fuel to have conversations about a transgender ban in the military, to have these conversations with energy and with the courage, but also with the excitement that we know these things change. Matter of fact, we know they will change.
But when you hear those stories, some trans person that, lost their job or lost their apartment or couldn't even get an apartment, I think we do have to remember that, if these really loud, crazy conservatives have their way, sort of like very cisgendered gay folks are going to be in that exact same boat of, we don't want your kind here either. I think it's a very slippery slope to think that, how our society ultimately decides to treat trans people is definitely going to have a big impact on the rest of us.
I remember 20 years ago, and the focus was the enemy were the gays. The gays were destroying America, blah, blah, blah. And as we've gained more acceptance, it's become the trans folks are destroying America, you know, and it's always shifts to the where there needs to be some education, right?
I think about Black, queer, and trans youth who have higher suicide rates than the already higher suicide rates of LGBTQ people, and the common misconception is that we have marriage equality now, what else do we want?
I think that there has been a divide in terms of race as well as economic class. I mean, I think those are really important things for leaders to recognize. And when I was talking about being open to allies, well, it's the same thing. I mean, folks who are in positions of leadership or influence within the community, I mean, we need to make sure that we're being allies within our own community, right? And being open to learning what we need to be to make sure that our movement is as inclusive and as powerful as possible.
And we need to do a lot more of decentralizing privileged voices and people who are oftentimes at the center. We need to bring in the folks that are on the margins to those conversations and to the table in order to enact real significant change at an institutional level. And so I think common misconception is that, like, we've got it all together, we've got equality, and that's just not the case.
I think having space matters. Having a voice matters. And we are doing better as a city and as a gay community in Columbus, but we still have a long ways to go. We still have a long ways to go, and really making that inclusivity a part of our DNA.
Part of my strategy is to make Stonewall be a place where all of us can find our voices, all of us can find a seat at the table. And most important to me is that we find a place where we don't have to fight. You know, we don't have to fight one another. You know, we don't have to fight to claim our identities. We can find what's best in ourselves and connect our best selves with what's best in the people around us. And we don't know yet what we can co-create together when we put our collective brilliance together.
It's a part of our awareness now, and that is a great thing. But we're not at where it's part of our DNA. It's just a part, and maybe no community is. And so I don't want to put an undue or unfair challenge to us, but we should really be striving for it. I love our gay community in Columbus, but I don't always feel like it reflects me. And I think that's all of our responsibility as gay people of color to step up more, to speak up more.
Being visible. And I heard that in 1993 in March on Washington, and that's really what got me inspired to come out. Was every message was the best thing you can do is come out and be authentic everywhere you are.
We have far more things in common if we think about, between LGBTQ community, whether you're, Filipino, whether you're, South Asian, whether you're Iranian, whether you're Israeli, different, religious groups of different ages. We have a lot of common experiences. So we have to capitalize on that. All we see are the differences. And yes, we have to be sensitive to our differences, but I think it is absolutely critical for our own existence that we come and bring unity amongst all of us.
I have some real strong opinions about where we need to go next as a community, and I think we need to stop looking at how separate we can be, and we need to find commonality. The fact that we have so many letters in our acronym, I think, speaks to the fact that we know we have differences, but how do we bring those differences together? We have chosen to all stand in that same list of letters, but do we stand in that same lifestyle together? Do we support each other, or do we look for the little idiosyncrasies that make us different? Is a person of color any less gay than I am? Is a man any more important than I am as a woman? Is a young person less valued than I am as a senior? It's the things that we need to do to really support each other. And through that, I think we will become cohesive, we will become a force, we will become a political action that can't be ignored. So when we talk about bullying and people having outrageous levels of suicide and all kinds of consequences to their sexuality choices and to their gender preferences and to their true birth identification, if we could just be more cohesive, if we could think about somebody besides ourselves sometimes and anticipate that we will have that support from others. So if I can support people of color, can they support me as a woman? If I can support men who are coming out at 18 and suffer through bullying through high school, can they support me as an elder? Can I support a young woman who isn't really sure if she is a young woman and hasn't had enough of a test yet to make that clear, or hasn't worked through the consequences of what that decision will mean for her for the rest of her life? Can't we just do that in a way that is powerful and supportive? And I think that's really our future. If we intend to be a strong force, if we intend to not have to always celebrate ourselves one day a year, it'll be through that kind of cooperation.
I've struggled with pride, where a lot of people in the trans and non-binary community at Pride don't feel welcomed. And that is something that I've been trying really hard to change and make more of a presence for my community, the trans and non-binary community. And I want to be a voice for that and to support my other trans brothers and sisters, that we have a place in Pride and a place in the LGBT community.
We are a people that know no boundary. We have no physical location. We are attached to no race. We are attached to no gender. We are attached to no religion. We are everywhere. And we embody humanity. And it is through love that and in the name of love, that pushes us to do what we do. And that is so powerful. I don't know of any other movement and any other people who are bound across race, who are bound across religions, who are bound across physical location, who are connected, and whose sole mission is love. And I think that that is so powerful. And I think that that allows us to celebrate globally and with our allies and our people.
So every day I celebrate, and I'm very thankful that I'm able to live my life the way I want to live it. And I'm very thankful for the people that have fought for our rights before us. And I hope that I can do that for the younger generations.
When I wake up in the morning, I feel blessed. I feel privileged to be in this job at Stonewall Columbus. I feel privileged to have had the life experiences that I have had. And I feel like Stonewall is at the very beginning of an entirely new era in its existence. And that feels a whole lot like my life.
If I could go back to when I was 5 years old, I remember Ellen, the Ellen show was on TV, and she wore a tux to a wedding, and I looked at my mom, and I was like, she gets to wear a suit, like, why can't I wear a suit? My mom was just kind of like, she's weird, like, AKA she's gay, and I was kind of like, oh, but I would love to tell myself, hey, 20 years, you're going to be in a wedding, and you're going to be wearing a very badass suit, and you're going to look really damn good in it, and it's not going to be weird.
If I had the decision to go back when I was barely a sperm and an egg put together, and had the decision to choose straight or gay, I would choose gay every single time. We have a fabulous, fabulous culture. We are artistic, we are confident, we are authentic, we are woke. As the gay community, we do rally behind each other to support each other. I feel that I would have my life no other way. We're fabulous.
So pride means everything. To this community, it means a place of public celebration. It is the quintessential intersection of individuality and community, right? That is the power of pride. But pride on a very individual level is, I don't live in shame of who I am. I don't live in shame of the path that I've had to take to get to who I am. And I live in wild, happy anticipation of everything that I can become as a result of finally being willing to know who I am, have a vision for my life, and have the power to make that dream come true.